The temple of Athena breathed like a living thing at dawn. Stone columns drank the cool blue light, and the marble floor remembered every footstep that had ever crossed it. Medusa rose before the sun, as she always did, her palms pressed to the chill of the altar, her breath steady, her vows unbroken. She had been chosen young, chosen clean, chosen devout. The city whispered her name with reverence, the priestess with the quiet eyes. They said Athena favored her because she listened more than she spoke. Medusa believed them. She braided her dark hair tight against her skull, an act of discipline as much as ritual. Each braid was a promise, restraint, humility, service. She washed her face in the basin where oil lamps flickered like trapped stars. The goddess's statue loomed above, Athena in perfect stillness, spear grounded, gaze forward. Wisdom carved in stone never blinked. Medusa knelt and prayed for the city's children, for the sailors, for the women who brought offerings with trembling hands. She prayed for herself last. Always last. The temple doors groaned open when the sun crested the horizon. Footsteps echoed, heavy, uninvited. The air shifted. Medusa felt it before she turned, the way prey feels a shadow where there should be light. A god entered without asking. Poseidon's presence salted the air, the lamps shuddered as if waves passed through flame. "My lord," she said, rising, keeping her eyes lowered. Respect was survival. His voice rolled like distant thunder. "Look at me." She did not. Not because she was afraid, but because she had been taught that obedience to Athena meant boundaries, hers and others. Poseidon laughed, a sound too large for the room. The doors slammed shut behind him. What happened next would be told 100 ways by 100 mouths. Songs would be written that made it sound like consent, like seduction, like a mistake shared by two equals. But the truth lived only in Medusa's bones, a god does not ask. He takes. The temple did not protect her. The goddess did not descend. Stone watched as flesh learned how small it was. When it was over, the lamps went out one by one. Poseidon left the way storms leave, sudden, complete, unconcerned with what remains. Medusa stayed on the floor, cheek pressed to marble slick with oil and tears. She waited for Athena's voice, for judgment that would name the crime and the criminal. She waited until the sun climbed and her knees went numb. Athena arrived at noon. The goddess's sandals did not echo. Her armor did not clink. Athena stood as if she had always been there, eyes sharp as blades. Medusa crawled to her feet and bowed, shame and hope tangling in her chest. "I kept my vows," Medusa whispered. "I did not call to him. I did not." "Silence," Athena said. The word struck like a blow. The statue seemed to breathe. The air thickened with something older than mercy. Athena circled Medusa, gaze raking her like a ledger. "You defiled my temple." Medusa's mouth opened. Closed. She tasted iron. "I was defiled," she said, "the smallest rebellion. By him." Athena stopped. Her eyes flicked, not with doubt, but calculation. "The world does not measure gods the way it measures women," she said. "Your suffering threatens order. Order must be preserved." The curse fell like winter. Pain threaded through Medusa's scalp, 1,000 needles pushing outward. Her braids writhed. She screamed as bone reshaped and skin split, as hair became muscle and scale. Snakes erupted, hissing in a chorus that knew her fear because it was born from it. Her eyes burned until seeing became a weapon, until looking meant ending. Athena stepped back, unmarked. "You will never be desired again," she said, voice steady as law. "You will be feared. And fear will keep the world safe." Medusa collapsed. When she lifted her face, the marble floor had changed. The patterns were sharper, crueler. A petrified priest lay where she had fallen, mouth frozen open in prayer. Medusa's breath hitched. She squeezed her eyes shut, but the snakes did not obey. They saw for her. The room filled with stone corpses, a garden of endings. "Leave," Athena commanded. So Medusa fled. She ran from the city into the hills, from the hills into the caves where light feared to linger. Her reflection haunted her in pools of water she dared not look into. She learned to move by touch, by sound, by the hiss of her own living crown. When hunters came, and they came quickly, she hid, shaking, begging them to go. They did not listen. They never listened. The first man she killed was an accident. He lunged. She looked. He froze mid-curse, a statue of arrogance. After that, the accidents multiplied. Stories spread faster than truth ever had. Monster. Gorgon. Abomination. Kings promised gold. Warriors sharpened blades. The gods watched, amused. Medusa learned a new prayer, "Do not make me see." But seeing was all she had left. Far away, in a palace that gleamed with mirrors, a boy named Perseus was given a task wrapped in praise. Kill the monster. Bring back her head. Erase the shame. And somewhere in the dark, Medusa listened to the stones breathe and wondered how long a woman could survive when the world insists she is a legend. The cave learned her name before the world did. It was a wound in the mountain, black-mouthed, narrow, breathing cold. Medusa pressed her palms to the stone and felt its patience. Rock did not judge. Rock did not ask for beauty or purity or silence. It simply endured. She chose the deepest chamber, where daylight drowned before it could reach her, and curled herself small among stalagmites that resembled broken teeth. The snakes quieted there, lulled by damp and dark, their bodies looping against her skin like anxious thoughts. She slept in fragments. When she dreamed, marble faces crowded her, frozen screams, eyes locked forever on the thing that ended them. She woke choking, her heart a trapped bird. Hunger gnawed. Thirst followed. She learned to drink without seeing, lips finding water by sound alone. She learned to eat by smell, by the brush of movement near her feet. She learned to move slowly, deliberately, because panic had consequences now. Sometimes she forgot and looked. The cave kept the evidence. Stone men littered the outer tunnels, hunters, mercenaries, boys with too much courage and too little sense. Their armor caught what little light filtered in and threw it back, jagged and accusing. Medusa wrapped cloth around her eyes when she ventured past them, thick enough to blind but thin enough to breathe. The snakes protested, hissing, their tongues tasting the air she refused. They were hungry too. They bit her scalp in irritation, reminding her that the curse was alive and wanted. She whispered to them, at first in anger, then in apology. "I didn't ask for you," she told them. "But you didn't ask for me either." At night, when the mountain cooled and the wind threaded through cracks like a ghost looking for a body, voices came. Some were real, campfires below, laughter sharp with fear. Others were not. Athena's voice returned in pieces, a remembered command stitched into Medusa's skull. Order must be preserved. Poseidon's laughter followed, wet and distant. She bit her wrist to anchor herself to the present and tasted blood instead of gods. The first time she killed on purpose, she vomited until her throat burned. They came in a pair, brothers by the look of them, matching scars, matching arrogance. One spoke her name like a dare. Gorgon, he called, as if it were an insult she might answer to. Medusa stood with her back to them, hands shaking, cloth tight across her eyes. "Go," she said. "Please." The taller one laughed. Steel rasped from a sheath. The snakes hissed, loud, furious. A warning bell. The shorter brother lunged. Medusa turned. She did not watch the stone claim him, but she felt it, the way the air thickened, the way time tripped. When she faced forward again, only one set of footsteps remained. The taller brother screamed her name and ran. She sank to her knees, retching, while behind her the mountain accepted another statue. After that, she stopped begging. The hunters grew more inventive. Nets weighted with lead. Smoke to blind her snakes. Polished shields to catch her gaze and throw it back like a curse rebounding. She learned to listen for breath, for the scrape of fear against rock. She learned to count heartbeats. The snakes learned with her, striking at ankles, faces, throats, small mercies before the end. Each kill carved something out of her and filled the space with stone. Word traveled faster than mercy. Villages emptied when shadows lengthened. Mothers told children that disobedience would summon her. Men sang songs that turned her pain into punchlines. She became a shape to fear, a story to control. The truth rotted unheard in the dark. Once, a woman came alone. She dropped her torch at the cave mouth and walked forward with her hands open, eyes downcast. Medusa felt her before she saw her, the way grief smells like cold iron. "I don't want gold," the woman said, voice breaking. "My husband came here. My sons followed. I just want to know." Medusa pressed herself into the stone and did not turn. "Leave," she said. "I won't look," the woman promised. "I swear by the gods." The snakes hissed at the lie. Gods had been sworn on before. The woman stepped closer. Medusa heard the tremor in her breath, the tremor she recognized from her own body. "Were you always this way?" the woman asked. Medusa swallowed. "No." Something in that single word cracked. The woman sobbed, the sound raw and animal. Medusa listened until it ended, until the woman backed away and disappeared into daylight. No stone marked that mercy. It existed only in Medusa's chest, fragile and aching. Far away, in a court polished to a mirror's lie, Perseus learned how to look without seeing. They taught him to use reflection, bronze shields, still water, the curve of polished metal. "Do not meet her eyes," they said. "She is a thing, not a woman. Remember that." Athena watched him practice, approval cool and sharp. Hermes smiled, already measuring the speed of death. The gods arranged gifts like alibis. In the cave, Medusa dreamed of mirrors that showed her as she had been, hair braided, eyes human, hands clean. She woke with snakes coiled around her throat, protective or possessive, she could no longer tell. She wondered which would come first, the hunter who ended her, or the day she forgot the sound of her own name. Perseus learned to walk without leaving footprints. Hermes taught him that first, how to place the heel, then the outer edge, then the ball of the foot, as if the ground were a sleeping animal that might wake and bite. "Speed is mercy," the god said, smiling like a blade. "Hesitation is death." Athena taught him not to think. She placed a shield in his hands, its bronze face polished to a liquid shine. "You will see her," the goddess said, "but not as she is. Reflections are safer than truth." Her eyes did not blink. Perseus nodded because that is what boys do when gods instruct them to become tools. At night, he dreamed of eyes. They were not monstrous in the dream. They were human, wide, dark, waiting. He woke sweating, heart racing, and pressed his palms together as he had been taught. The palace was quiet, full of soft lies and silk shadows. He reminded himself of the songs, "The Gorgon is a curse. The Gorgon is a beast. The Gorgon must die." Still, the dreams persisted. When he left the city, he traveled light. The winged sandals Hermes gifted him whispered against the air. The helm of invisibility weighed heavier than it should have, as if it remembered every man who had used it to disappear from consequence. Perseus avoided his reflection in still water. He told himself it was discipline. He told himself it was fear. The road to the mountain was paved with proof. Stone bodies stood like warnings, some mid-stride, some with mouths open in final arguments. Perseus slowed, shield raised, breath careful. He circled the statues, studying the details, the terror carved into faces, the desperation etched into hands frozen in reach. These were not the expressions of men who had found glory. These were men who had found understanding too late. He touched one statue's cheek. It was cold. He pulled his hand back quickly, as if burned. At the cave mouth, the air tasted wrong, metallic, damp, alive. Perseus slipped the helm on and vanished from sight, though not from himself. He moved by reflection now, shield angled, eyes trained on the bronze surface. The cave swallowed sound. Every drip echoed like a heartbeat. Something hissed. Perseus froze. He adjusted the shield and caught movement in the reflection, shadows sliding, coils tightening. Snakes. Too many to count. They writhed with purpose, their eyes bright, their bodies muscular and close. His pulse hammered. He took another step, then another, moving as Hermes had taught him. He saw her then. Not directly. Never directly. In the shield's curved lie, Medusa knelt beside a pool, her back to him, shoulders hunched as if carrying a weight too heavy for bone. Her hair was alive, yes, snakes braided into her skull, tongues tasting the air, but there was nothing triumphant in her posture. She looked small. Perseus hesitated. The cave seemed to hold its breath. Medusa sensed him. She did not turn. She never turned without cause anymore. The snake stilled, listening. Her hand found the cloth at her eyes, fingers white with tension. "Leave," she said, voice hoarse from disuse. "I won't chase you." Perseus swallowed. He said nothing. The shield trembled in his grip. "I said leave," Medusa repeated, louder now, anger threading fear. "I don't want," her voice broke. "I don't want to see." The word struck him harder than any weapon. He took a step back, boots scraping stone. The sound echoed like a confession. Medusa rose slowly. Perseus lifted the shield higher, heart in his throat. He watched her reflection, watched the way she kept her chin down, the way her hands shook, the way the snakes flared, sensing threat. This was not the monster of songs. This was a woman cornered by stories. "Who sent you?" Medusa asked. Perseus opened his mouth. Athena's teachings pressed in, sharp and urgent. "Do not think." He closed it again. "I know," Medusa said softly, bitter understanding blooming. "They always do." She turned, just a fraction. Perseus reacted on instinct, jerking the shield up, angling it away from his face. The snake screamed, a sound like tearing silk, and struck. Fangs scraped bronze. Perseus stumbled, heart racing, and nearly fell into the pool. He caught himself, breath ragged, eyes locked to the reflection. In the bronze, Medusa's eyes burned, not with malice, but with a terrible, aching restraint. She fought her own gaze, head tilted, eyes half-lidded, as if staring at the ground might save them both. "Please," she said, the word torn from her. "I don't want another." The cave filled with the sound of approaching stone, hunters outside, voices calling Perseus's name. Reinforcements. Witnesses. Pressure. Perseus felt the gods close in like hands on his shoulders. Hermes' laughter flickered at the edge of his thoughts. Athena's silence weighed more than any command. He advanced. The snakes lunged again. Perseus slashed blindly, the blade singing as it cut scale and muscle. Blood splattered the bronze, dark and slick. Medusa screamed, not in rage, but in pain so raw it seemed to split the cave itself. The sound crawled into Perseus's chest and nested there. He faltered. Just for a second. It was enough. A flash of movement in the reflection, her head lifting, eyes widening despite herself. Perseus twisted away, shield snapping up, vision spinning. Stone raced across the cave floor where her gaze landed, freezing a fallen torch mid-roll. Perseus gasped, alive by inches. Medusa staggered back, clutching her scalp, blood dripping between her fingers. The snakes recoiled, wounded and furious. She sobbed, a sound Perseus would carry forever. Outside, the hunters cheered, mistaking noise for victory. Inside, the cave watched two survivors circle each other, both knowing that only one story would be allowed to leave. The cave did not belong to either of them anymore. Perseus backed away, breath shredding his lungs, shield slick with blood and condensation. Every step echoed too loud. Medusa stood trembling, one hand clamped over her scalp, snakes writhing in pain and fury, their hisses filling the chamber like steam escaping a wound. Stone dust drifted from the ceiling where her accidental gaze had struck, settling on them both like ash. "I didn't want this," she whispered. Perseus heard it even over his own heartbeat. The words did not sound like a spell or a threat. They sounded like exhaustion, the kind that seeps into bones and refuses to leave. "I know," he said before he could stop himself. The admission shocked him more than her. He had not planned to speak. Hermes had warned him, words make space for doubt. Athena had been clearer, finish it. Medusa flinched at his voice. She turned her face away immediately, pressing her forehead to the rock wall as if apologizing to it. "Then go," she said. "Take your gods and go." Outside, boots scraped stone. The hunters were closer now, voices sharp with anticipation. Perseus felt the pressure of time clamp around his chest. He was supposed to end this quickly, cleanly, return with proof, return with silence. He looked at her reflection again. In bronze, her face was streaked with blood and tears, eyes squeezed shut, jaw clenched so hard it trembled. She looked nothing like the legend. She looked like someone bracing for the next betrayal. Perseus lowered the sword. The cave seemed to inhale. "I was told you were a curse," he said carefully. "That killing you would restore balance." Medusa laughed, a broken, humorless sound. "Balance," she repeated. "Is that what they call it when a god gets away with everything?" Perseus had no answer. Her snakes hissed, sensing the shift, uncertain whether this pause was mercy or a longer cruelty. One of them, smaller, wounded, curled weakly against her cheek. Medusa pressed her face into it, a mother soothing a child. Perseus's grip tightened on the shield. The air changed. Cold swept the chamber, sharp and sudden, extinguishing the last torch outside. Light bent. Sound flattened. Perseus knew that feeling, knew it the way a body knows the edge of a blade before it cuts. Athena arrived. She did not enter through the cave mouth. She simply was, standing between them, armored and immaculate, eyes burning with intelligence untouched by doubt. The cave recoiled. Even the stone seemed to straighten in her presence. "Enough," Athena said. Medusa went still. Perseus dropped to one knee without thinking. "Goddess." "Stand," Athena commanded. He obeyed. She turned her gaze to Medusa, cool and appraising, as if inspecting a cracked tool. "You have caused disruption," Athena said. "Your continued existence invites chaos." Medusa's shoulders shook. "You made me this." Athena did not deny it. "I corrected an imbalance." Perseus felt something fracture behind his ribs. "She was assaulted," he said, the words tasting like treason. "In your temple." Athena's eyes flicked to him, sharp enough to cut. "You presume to judge gods." "I presume to see," Perseus said, before fear could swallow him. He raised the shield slightly, not in threat, but as proof. "I saw her fear. I saw restraint. This isn't justice. It's erasure." The cave held its breath. Athena smiled. It was a small expression, precise and devastating. "You see reflections," she said. "Not truth." She stepped closer to Medusa. The snakes recoiled, hissing, but Athena did not flinch. You were devoted, Athena continued. Your devotion was weakness. The world devours weakness. Medusa lifted her head despite herself. Her eyes fluttered, fighting the curse, tears spilling. You left me, she said. You let him. Silence, Athena snapped. The word slammed into Medusa like a blow. She gasped, folding inward, hands over her ears as if to block a voice that lived inside her skull. Perseus moved without thinking. He stepped between them. Athena's gaze sharpened. You forget your purpose. No, Perseus said, voice shaking. I remember it. You wanted the truth buried with her. The goddess studied him for a long moment. Then she laughed softly. You think truth survives without power? She lifted her hand. The snakes screamed. Invisible force crushed Medusa to her knees, pinning her like an offering. The cave walls groaned. Stone cracked. Perseus lunged forward, shield raised, but Athena flicked her wrist and hurled him back. He struck rock hard enough to see stars. Medusa screamed, not in pain alone, but in fury that burned hotter than fear. Her eyes snapped open. The curse surged. Athena reacted instantly, turning her face aside, but not before a shard of stone crept across her greave, freezing metal mid-shine. The goddess hissed, yanking back, shock flashing across her perfect control. Perseus watched, stunned. The gods could bleed. Athena recovered quickly, fury hardening her features. Enough, she snarled. This ends now. Medusa staggered upright, breath ragged, eyes blazing. She did not look at Athena. She looked past her, at Perseus. Don't let them do this again, she said. Before he could answer, Athena vanished, the cave snapping back into grim reality. The pressure lifted. The hunters outside shouted in confusion. Silence followed. Perseus pushed himself to his feet, shaking. Medusa stood across from him, taller somehow, steadier, grief transmuting into something sharper. Resolve. They'll never stop, Perseus said. I know, Medusa replied. Neither will I. For the first time, Perseus understood the truth the gods feared. This was no monster to be slain. This was a reckoning that had learned how to look back. The mountain remembered Athena's anger long after she vanished. Cracks crept across the cave walls like veins beneath skin. Pebbles rattled to the floor, skittering away from Medusa's feet as if afraid of her shadow. Perseus stood near the pool, shield lowered, sword forgotten in his hand. For the first time since leaving the palace, he felt unmoored, cut loose from orders, from purpose, from the clean simplicity of obedience. Medusa broke the silence first. You should have let her kill me, she said quietly. Perseus shook his head. That wouldn't have ended anything. She laughed under her breath. You learn fast. The hunters outside argued in harsh whispers. Someone shouted Perseus's name again, less confident this time. The mountain did not echo it. The cave had chosen what it would hold and what it would swallow. Medusa turned away from him, fingers brushing the stone wall. The snakes followed her touch, calming, their bodies sliding over rock as if recognizing kin. Perseus swallowed. They'll send more. They already have, Medusa said. As if summoned by the words, the air shuddered. Not with divinity this time, but with rumor given form. Wing beats cut the sky, harpies circling high, their cries sharp with glee. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a horn sounded, low and hungry. Perseus turned to Medusa. Come with me. She stiffened. Where? Anywhere but here, he said. This place is a noose. Medusa considered him for a long moment. The snakes lifted their heads, tasting his sincerity. The world is a noose, she said. Here, at least, I choose who tightens it. Perseus felt the truth of that settle into him like a stone. He looked down at his sword, at the blade meant to end her. Slowly, deliberately, he planted it point first into the ground. "I won't hunt you," he said. "I won't lie for them." Medusa closed her eyes. When she opened them, something fragile had shifted. Not trust, never that, but recognition. "Then leave," she said. "Before your gods decide you're more useful as an example." Perseus hesitated. "They'll want proof." Medusa's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "They always do." She reached up and grasped one of the snakes, thick, dark, unblinking. Perseus tensed, but she held it gently. "You wanted my head," she said. "Take what it means instead." She leaned close to the pool, eyes closed tight, and whispered something Perseus could not hear. The water rippled. The bronze shield in his hand warmed, then cooled, its surface changing, reflective, yes, but etched now with a pattern like scales, like eyes watching eyes. "A mirror that remembers," Medusa said. "Show them this. It will tell a story they can't fully control." Perseus stared at the shield. In it, he saw not Medusa, but the cave as it truly was, wounded, alive, crowded with witnesses. He nodded slowly. "Be careful," he said. Medusa snorted softly. "I've survived gods." He turned to leave. Outside, the world rushed in, wind, light, the stink of fear. The hunters recoiled when they saw him emerge alone. "Where is she?" one demanded. "Where is the head?" Perseus lifted the shield. The bronze surface shimmered, and for a heartbeat, the hunters saw what Perseus had seen, the kneeling woman, the snakes, the goddess's cold smile, the stone creeping up divine armor. Several men stumbled back. One fell to his knees and retched. "That's a lie," someone shouted. "A trick." Perseus met their eyes. "So is everything you were promised." He did not wait for their answer. The winged sandals carried him up and away, over the ridge, leaving confusion and fear gnawing at the camp. Behind him, the mountain exhaled. In the cave, Medusa listened to the sounds fade. She returned to the deepest chamber and sank to the floor, exhaustion finally claiming its due. The snakes coiled around her, a living crown that no longer felt like punishment alone. She pressed her forehead to the stone and breathed. Something had changed. The cave felt less like a grave and more like a heart. Far above, in halls of polished deceit, the gods argued. Athena paced, her greaves still scarred, fury bright and contained. "The boy wavers," she said. "The story fractures." Hermes shrugged. "Stories adapt. And if the monster becomes a martyr?" Athena snapped. Hermes smiled thinly. "Then monsters stop being the problem." Back in the dark, Medusa opened her eyes. For the first time since the temple, she did not look away. The world did not end when Medusa stopped looking away. It waited. In the days that followed, the mountain learned a new rhythm. The hunters who lingered at its base spoke in whispers now, their bravado rotting under the weight of what they had glimpsed in Perseus's shield. Some left offerings, bread, wine, crude prayers scratched into stone. Others stayed, stubborn and afraid, hoping fear would curdle back into courage. Medusa watched them from the shadows. She had learned to see without hunger, without panic. The curse still burned behind her eyes, but she no longer treated it like a thing to be hidden at all costs. She treated it like fire, dangerous, contained, purposeful. When she needed to move through the outer tunnels, she warned the cave with a hiss, a ritual the snakes understood. They lifted, they listened. They guarded. The first king came at dawn. He wore a circlet and a smile practiced for crowds. His men followed with shields polished to mirrors, confidence lacquered over fear. He called out to her with a voice trained to command rooms. "Medusa," he said, as if speaking her name made him generous. "I offer parley." She stepped into the light and did not lower her gaze. The king froze mid-breath. Stone raced across him like frost, swallowing the smile first. His men screamed and scattered, colliding with each other, tripping over their own reflections. Medusa turned slowly, deliberately, and the cave filled with statues in motion arrested, arms raised, mouths open, lies unfinished. She did not feel triumph. She felt balance. Word spread differently after that. No longer just fear. There was reverence now, twisted and wary. People stopped calling her monster and started calling her judge. Mothers whispered that lies would stiffen the tongue. Men warned each other not to look too long at cruelty, lest it look back. Medusa listened to it all from the dark. At night, the stones spoke. Not with voices, but with pressure, memories pressed into rock. She laid her palms on statues and felt their final thoughts bleed into her skin. Regret. Greed. Love curdled into entitlement. She learned their truths the way a butcher learns bone. It changed her. She began to dream differently, not of temples and gods, but of eyes opening across the land. Of people learning that being seen was not the same as being known. Of power flinching under scrutiny. The gods noticed. Storms bent away from the mountain, then snapped back with teeth. Crops failed in valleys that refused to denounce her. Oracles went silent or screamed themselves hoarse. Athena sent signs, owls circling in daylight, spears splitting stone, but none crossed the cave threshold. Medusa crossed it instead. She descended at twilight, moving through olive groves and abandoned roads. Villages emptied at her approach, doors barred, prayers shouted into the dirt. She stopped at the edges and waited. She did not chase. When a man came forward, trembling, eyes downcast, hands empty, she listened. "I lied," he said. "About my sister. About what I did." Medusa felt the snakes tense. She felt the heat behind her eyes. "Do you want absolution," she asked, "or truth?" The man wept. "I want it to stop." She looked at him. Stone claimed him gently, almost reverently, like a hand closing over a candle flame. The village watched from cracks and shadows. No one cheered. No one moved. After that, the lies slowed. Far away, Perseus ran. Not from her, from the gods. The shield had become dangerous. Wherever he showed it, something cracked. Courts fell silent. Priests stuttered. Once, Athena herself recoiled from its surface, fury flashing before control returned. Perseus learned to keep it wrapped, hidden, heavy with consequences. They're turning her into a symbol, Hermes warned him one night, appearing by a fire that refused to warm. Symbols get crushed. She was always one, Perseus replied. You just didn't like who it reflected. Hermes smiled sadly. Be careful, boy. Gods don't forgive. Mirrors. In the mountain, Medusa prepared. She sharpened herself, not with blades, but with intention. She practiced restraint until it hurt, learning how long she could look, how precisely. She practiced mercy too, though it cost more. The snakes healed and grew thicker, their eyes bright with a shared vigilance. Then Athena came again. This time, she did not hide her rage. Lightning split the sky. The cave shook as if the mountain itself were being interrogated. Athena descended in full armor, eyes blazing, spear humming with judgment. You are destabilizing the world, Athena said. You have become a god in all but name. Medusa stepped forward and met her gaze. No, she said. I've become what you pretended to be. The curse surged, hotter than ever. Stone crawled up Athena's spear, crept along her gauntlet, kissed the edge of her cheek. Athena screamed, not in pain, but in disbelief. You would dare. I dare look, Medusa said, voice steady as bedrock. You taught me that. Athena tore herself free, stone cracking away, fury incandescent. This ends now. Medusa felt the weight of it, the end she had been promised, rewritten, postponed. She felt the stones around her tense, listening. So be it, she said. Their gazes locked. The mountain roared. Far across the land, people felt it, the sudden pressure behind the eyes, the sense of being seen by something older than excuse. Lies faltered. Statues cracked. The gods trembled. And in the dark heart of the cave, Medusa stood unflinching, her gaze no longer a curse alone, but a verdict. The mountain did not survive the gods' rage. It endured it. Lightning shattered peaks. The cave convulsed, ancient rock screaming as if torn from a dream it had been sleeping since the world was young. Athena's fury split the sky open, her spear a line of judgment aimed at erasure. The gods had decided, if the story could not be controlled, it would be buried. Medusa stood at the center of it all, unmoving. Her snakes rose as one, a crown of living wrath, scales rattling like 1,000 whispered no's. The pressure behind her eyes burned, not pain now, but focus sharpened to a blade. She had crossed the threshold she once feared. There was no returning to hiding. Athena lunged. Their gazes collided. Time fractured. Stone raced outward in a shockwave, freezing lightning mid-branch, halting the god's wrath in a half-formed scream. Athena fought it with every ounce of divinity she possessed, muscles locking, armor cracking, veins of marble crawling up her perfect form. The goddess who had never bled felt the first true terror of consequence. You were meant to be a warning, Athena snarled, teeth clenched against petrification. I was meant to be believed, Medusa replied. The stone climbed higher. Athena wrenched herself free with a scream that shook the heavens, leaving fragments of her armor frozen in place, monuments to a truth she could not erase. She vanished in a storm of fury and fear, retreating not in victory, but in damage control. The mountain fell silent. When the dust settled, the cave lay open to the sky, its ceiling torn away. Moonlight poured in, pale and witnessing. Medusa dropped to her knees, breath tearing from her chest. The snakes coiled tight, shielding her, hissing at shadows that no longer dared approach. She was alive. Across the land, the effects rippled. Temples cracked. Statues wept stone tears. Oracles spoke truths they could not soften. Kings woke screaming from dreams where their reflections accused them. The gods did not fall, but they staggered. For the first time, they were seen. Perseus felt it from miles away. He collapsed to one knee as the shield burned against his back, its surface alive with fractures of light. He knew, without being told, that the story had broken free of its cage. He laughed then, soft, breathless, terrified, and wept because something vast had shifted and could never be pushed back into silence. He did not return to court. Neither did the hunters. They left the mountain alone. Days passed. Then weeks. People came, not with weapons, but with questions. They stood at a distance, eyes lowered, voices careful. Medusa did not stone them unless they looked with hunger, with entitlement, with the old cruelty dressed up as curiosity. Most learned quickly. Some did not. Stone grew around the mountain, not a graveyard, but a record. Each statue told a story that could not lie anymore. Travelers stopped calling it cursed ground. They called it the place where the world looked back. Medusa learned to walk beneath the open sky. The first time, her legs shook. Wind touched her face without fear. The snakes tasted sunlight and hummed low, content. She moved at dusk and dawn, when the world was gentlest, and learned the land the way she had once learned the temple, by listening. She was no goddess. She was no monster. She was a survivor who refused erasure. One evening, she stood at the edge of the mountain and looked out over valleys that had learned restraint. Children played under watchful eyes. Men argued, then stopped themselves. Women spoke louder. It was not peace. It was accountability. In the halls of the gods, silence festered. Athena did not speak Medusa's name again. None of them did. Names had power, and they had learned, too late, that some truths grow teeth when spoken. Stories still tried to tame her. They said she was softened. Redeemed. Forgiven. Medusa let them talk. She knew better. Forgiveness had never been the point. She returned to the cave one last time, to the place where she had learned to survive the dark. She touched the stone walls and felt no accusation, only memory. The mountain had done its work. So had she. As she turned away, moonlight caught her eyes. They did not glow with malice. They reflected the world exactly as it was. And for the first time in the long, brutal life of a legend, the curse did not look back alone. The world did.